What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket as we continue just a fantastic Friday. It's just a great day. Luka Doncic is an absolute assassin. Stampede Blue, Colts Wire, Horseshoe Heroes, those sides, they're out in full force. Always enjoy making fun of those guys. The Dan Dawkins Show today from noon to 3 is going to be great. Lynn Dunn coming on at like 2:15, so that'll be good. And hopefully another hoops guy. I need these people to respond to me. Am I losing my touch? I might be. That's not true. That's not happening. But Luka Doncic, an absolute assassin. It was on full display last night. I tried to warn you guys. Okay, if you listened to the show yesterday, you know that I warned you. Luka Doncic, he's incredible. Okay, showed last night why he's the second best player in the world. That's right. Despite what you're hearing from ESPN and these other places, he's not better than Nikola Jokic. Okay, like one game, like we can't overreact to it, and that's what people are doing right now. He's one of the two best players in the world. Second behind Jokic. And with that being said, like in any big game, how do you take anyone that's not named Luka Doncic? Okay, this is the second time that we've seen him snatch a team's soul on the road to eliminate them from the playoffs. Okay, 2 years ago, Game 7 on the road against the Phoenix Suns with an opportunity to make the Western Conference Finals on the line. Okay, and that Phoenix Suns team expected to make the finals again. That was their expectation. That was Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton the year after they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. And Luka comes out and scores 35 points, pulls down 10 rebounds, and shoots 63% from the floor and 55% from three. I mean, he came out in the first quarter of that game 2 years ago, scored 12 points, followed it up with 15 in the second. You looked up, he had 27 points at the end of the first half, and the Mavericks were up by like 40. Okay, he was dominant in that game 2 years ago, just like he was last night. He came out against the Timberwolves last night in Game 5, and he outscored him in the first quarter. Luka Doncic scored 20 points in the first quarter, and the Timberwolves only scored 19. Okay, he came out early, and he set the tone in the first quarter. And that tone was, bye-bye, Minnesota. I'm way better than all of y'all. You guys can't beat us because I'm playing tonight. Okay, and Luka went on to finish the game with 36 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists on 64% shooting from the floor and 60% shooting from three. And it was incredible just the way he came out and didn't allow Minnesota to breathe. He came out and he hit them with just a barrage of shots early. He comes out, he hits his first shot. It's a little floater, comes down, pulls up from three, hits a 30-footer, comes down the following possession and hits another 30-footer. 3 possessions, 8 points, and the Mavs were off and running. Okay, and throughout the playoffs, throughout the season as a whole, people have compared Anthony Edwards to Michael Jordan. And look, it's not an absurd comparison, right? They're very similar. They're both like 6'6". They both have long arms. They're both highly explosive. They're both very charismatic, right? Like they're very similar in a lot of ways. But the killer instinct was on full display from Luka Doncic last night. And when you watch the game, I don't know how it doesn't remind you of Michael Jordan. Okay, like the killer instinct to stomp out any sort of life that the Timberwolves had before the game even got going yesterday. Like that's what Luka had, right? And I'm 24. I didn't see Jordan live. Okay, I've gone back. I've watched a lot of his classic games. But when people talk about Michael Jordan, whether you like Michael Jordan, you think he's the greatest player ever, whether you think LeBron's better, whatever, like no matter who you are, when you discuss Michael Jordan, the thing that people preach about him is this killer instinct to step out onto the floor and just snatch teams' souls away. Like that's what he's really most well known for, besides the 2 3-peats and the 6 rings, right? Michael Jordan's will to win, the ability to just grab a game and take it. Like that is a common talking point when Michael Jordan's legacy is brought up. Dare I say that's the main talking point that people have. And what Luka did last night was that. How does that not remind you of what Michael Jordan used to do to teams in the 90s? Okay, like Michael Jordan would go out in the fourth quarter and he would just take games away from people. He would snatch them away. Like this is mine. It's not yours. Go home. And that's what Luka did last night. He just did it from the jump. He came out, he claimed the game as his, and they put the Timberwolves away early. comes out, scores 20 points in the first quarter. He rests a decent amount in the second quarter. And when he was out of the game and the shots weren't falling quite at the same rate, Kyrie Irving steps up. And he didn't miss a shot in the second quarter. 5 of 5, finished the second quarter he scored 14 points in the second quarter. Right? Like Luka's going to steal the headlines as he should. Western Conference Finals MVP, second best player in the world. ESPN and these other places are going to try to tell you differently, but I'm telling you right now, Jokic is better than Luka. That's just the way that it is. But Kyrie was great, not only in the series, but also in the game last night. He finished with 36 points, just as many as Luka did, on 52% shooting from the floor and 40% from three. That means that Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, the two guys who couldn't coexist because they both have to have the ball and all those different types of things that were said, those two guys combined to score 72 points. 72 points on 57% shooting from the floor. That has to be one of the best, elimination Western Conference Finals games we've ever seen from a duo. 72 points, 57% shooting from the floor. I don't care who you are. You aren't beating anybody when you allow two players to combine for that point total on that shooting efficiency. Okay, you could be the 90s Bulls. You could be the Showtime Lakers. You could be one of the great Celtic teams from the 80s. Pick whatever team you want. You're not beating the Mavericks or anybody when their two best players combined to score 72 points on 57% shooting from the floor. It's not going to happen. And I think last night fully displayed what this series was about. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving were the two best players on the floor last night. Luka Doncic was the best player in the series. Kyrie Irving was the second best player in the series. And that series, Mavs and Timberwolves, feels similar to Boston and Indiana in that regard as well. The reason why the Pacers lost to the Celtics, ultimately, the reason why they were swept was because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were the two best players in the series. Every game. Okay, the two best players in game one, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Two best players in game two, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. And that continues in games 3 and 4. That's why they swept. And when we look at this Dallas and Minnesota series, the reason why the Timberwolves got a game was because in game 4, Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards outplayed Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in game 4. Like Luka and Kyrie, they didn't shoot the ball well. They both combined to shoot under 35% from the floor. Like you aren't going to beat anybody when your two best players do that. And they only lost by 5. So the lesson that I think we can pull away from these or at least from these conference finals series are two things. Stars win in the conference finals, and experience wins in the conference finals. Okay, we both saw it, in both of these conference finals this year. The Mavs had the two best players in the series. They had been there before, right? Kyrie Irving has won an NBA title, played a huge role on that Cavs team when they came back from down 3-1 in the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. Luka played in the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. Okay, like their two best players had been there before, and they were able to lead the way, and they won. And the Celtics, similar. They had two superstars that had been there before. 6 Eastern Conference Finals appearances in the last 8 years, with an NBA Finals appearance in there as well. And they won the series in large part because they had the two best players and because of the experience. And it should be a great NBA Finals, right? We're going to have this debate of, do you pick the better team to win? Because when you look across the roster, up and down, top to bottom, like the Celtics have the better roster. I will concede that. But the Mavericks have the best player in the series, and that is Luka Doncic. So do you take the better player? Do you take the better team? How do you go about it? I don't know. We'll kind of see how people go about it. But in honor of Luka making the NBA Finals, I wanted to take a moment to recognize the other chubby white athletes that were great at whatever their sport is. And so I don't have all of them on here. These are just the first ones that come to mind. Otter Creek in the YouTube chat. If you want to send me suggestions, feel free to tweet at me at __ Jonathan Smith, or you can go over to YouTube, search for Indie Sports Ticket. You can join the live stream and you can comment them in the chat there. Like I said, Otter Creek has thrown out a few that I didn't mention earlier. Phil Mickelson, Colin Montgomery, those kind of guys. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to tweet at me or to head on over to YouTube and give me some recommendations. Or once again, you can tweet at me at __ Jonathan Smith. So Jokic and Luka both had to be on here. Who thought that we'd ever see the day where two chubby white guys are the two best basketball players in the world? Okay, Jokic, 6'11", 284. I know he loves horses, but I don't think there's a horse in the world that could run with him on their back. Luka, 6'7". He's listed at 230. I don't think that's right. Okay, guys who drink beer after games, like Luka, I don't know if you saw that clip. He's in the hallway cracking a cold one with his dad, talking about the game, and the assistant GM for the Mavs walks by and just plucks it out of his hands and he just keeps it moving. So there's no way Luka Doncic only weighs 230 pounds. No way. It's got to be more than that. Minnesota Timberwolves Kevin Love is also on this list, a guy who I believe had MVP votes during his time in Minnesota. Back to the basket, bruiser, 6'8", 251, coming out of UCLA. Still is thick now. Okay, like gives me real old guy at the rec vibes with the gray beard and the belly, right? And then we move into a real big in here. Bryant Reeves, also known as Big Country, 7 feet tall, 275 pounds, giving Shaquille O'Neal buckets back in the day. He had to make the list, right? I mean, just an inspiration to chubby white guys everywhere. Mehmet Okur, he's from Turkey, had a decent career in the NBA, played for like 7, 8, maybe 9 years. He had a nice little cup of coffee or two in the NBA. Then we move into golf, as I said. Phil Mickelson, he's a little pudgy. John Daly, though. Can't not mention John Daly. 5'11", 215 pounds. That's a dude right there. I believe he's won one major. I think that's it. That might be wrong. Got to freshen up on my John Daly history, apparently. So John Daly, he is the epitome of this list. Okay, I would love to walk 18 holes with John Daly. I don't want to say a word to him. I just want to see how his stamina lasts trying to walk 18 holes. Golly. Next on the list, there are a lot of older baseball players that you could put on here. So just to encapsulate all of them, my next players on this list is just every Major League Baseball player from its inception to April 15th of 1947, which is when the league integrated. So there's all those guys. There's your Babe Ruths and all those absolute legends from way back in the day. Staying in the world of baseball, John Kruk has to be on this list. 5'10", 200 pounds, played first base for the Phillies, has the famous quote where he's out on a date with someone and with a lady, and the lady's like, oh, like, he did something. She's like, aren't you an athlete? And he goes, I'm not an athlete. I'm a baseball player, which when he played first base, that is, yeah, like that's pretty accurate. Next, I put Travis Kelce on here because of the photo of him and Taylor Swift where he's shirtless and he's got love handles that an elephant can't wrap their trunk around. So had to put Travis Kelce on the list at 6'5", 250. And then the last guy here, rest in peace to this guy, Jared Lorenzen, also known as the Hefty Lefty, played for 2 years in the NFL, played quarterback for the New York Giants at 6'4", 285 pounds, coming out of the University of Kentucky. The Hefty Lefty, man, that was a big dude. He died of a heart attack, I think a couple years ago, not too incredibly long ago. So that's the list of best chubby white athletes of all time. Like I said, feel free to tweet at me at Twitter at __ Jonathan Smith if you have any sort of recommendation on that. On top of that as well, you can also join the YouTube chat. Just search for Indie Sports Ticket on YouTube, and the live stream should pop up. So there's a list one more time. Jokic at 6'11", 284 pounds. Luka Doncic, 6'7", 230 pounds. This is, once again, the best chubby white athletes of all time. Minnesota Timberwolves, Kevin Love at 6'8", 251. Bryant Reeves, a.k.a. Big Country, at 7 feet tall, 275 pounds. Mehmet Okur at 6'11", 249. John Daly at 5'11", 215. Every Major League Baseball player from its inception to April 15th, 1947. John Crook at 5'10", 200. Travis Kelce, 6'5", 250. That one's debatable. If you want to take him off the list, fine. Then, of course, Jared Lorenzen, the hefty lefty at 6'4", 285 pounds, slinging the rock on the gridiron for the New York Giants for a couple seasons. In 4 minutes, I'm going to talk about the NBA, this 2020s decade, how interesting it is. We're going to, I believe, wrap up the show. I think this is the last segment of the week, which really sucks. And if I have extra time, I'll run through that. Worst indie blogger boys articles once again. That's all coming up here in about 4 minutes.